Hello. So today we're going to talk about borderline personality disorder briefly and how it differs from narcissistic personality disorder. I had my eyes opened to what borderline is by John Collins, who runs the YouTube channel Masses v Classes. I'll put a link to John Collins' video that he just did for me on borderline personality disorder below, so I recommend you go and check that out. I was chatting to him on Skype and we were supposed to be talking about the narcissistic tendencies of governments and how you can see at a governmental level the same things that people are doing interpersonal level and comparing them, and we just drifted on to talking about borderline personality disorder, and I started talking about my ex-girlfriend and saying that's what got me into narcissism, was understanding where she was coming from. And as I spoke to him and he asked me certain key questions, it became very apparent to me that actually I was never dealing with a narcissist, and that the personality disorder that I was facing was borderline personality disorder. And one of the key elements that distinguished that was the amount of devastation that was left in the wake of that relationship, which apparently is common when you're in a relationship with borderline personality disorder for a period of time. They can make narcissists look like a walk in the park by comparison, because as John pointed out to me, a narcissist, once you've understood them, you can actually control them, because really all they need is for you to feed into their ego and then that's it. It's not really that much more than that. With borderline, you don't get that. Now, what's borderline personality disorder? Even the term borderline is a little bit not so useful. Borderline in this context means that the individual is on the borderline of being in total psychosis. So they're functioning, but just barely. It's actually also called emotionally unstable personality disorder, which is probably a better way, but it's not as easy and quick to say as borderline. Emotionally unstable personality disorder. It's marked by intense impulsivity. Now, borderline personality disorder is nasty. I've been with a borderline person and the effect was devastating, because my perception of reality was gaslit to the point where I think, now looking back, I think I kind of went into a bit of a breakdown. I think I actually, over a slow spiraling breakdown over a period of 2 years, and even when it stopped, I think after that I was left in a depression. Classic clinical depression, which I've been in denial about for years, and now I'm going to come out and say, I'm pretty sure I was depressed. You know, I had all the classic symptoms of depression, so I'm just going to go ahead and say I was depressed. I couldn't get traction in my life, couldn't move forward with anything, because I was so devastated. But having said that, and also marking the fact that it is reported that clinicians and psychiatrists apparently can treat people with borderline slightly negatively, because it's seen as like a nasty character, which they can be. There is compassion here behind this, and this is where we'll come into the compassionate part of it, which is one element of their behaviour that is intensely marked always is extreme impulsivity. Impulsivity of words, impulsivity of action. It's like they get an idea in their head, and that filter that breaks between the idea being like a potential thing that should be done, where somebody who has stronger object constancy, stronger cognitive processes could sit there and weigh it up and say, do I want this or not? What's the consequence? It seems to be that they don't have that, or that it's very, very weak, very, very diminished. So they get an idea and they do it. Intensely impulsive. Now, here's where the compassion comes in. Why? Well, this intense impulsivity of thought and of action manifests as, unprotected sex with multiple partners, unwanted pregnancies. I mean, why not? It feels good to have sex, so let's just have sex without thinking about the consequence of it. You haven't got a condom? Never mind. Nothing is real anyway. I can't distinguish between reality and fancy, so let's just do it. Drinking, binge drinking to the point where some researchers, and John pointed this out, it might actually cause brain damage. Now, in the case of my experience, the girl was very sexually active from an age that was too young, and she drank a hell of a lot for years. She was a real binge drinker. What else do they engage in? Well, drugs, sex, drink, whatever. Food, impulsive eating of food. I mean, that was another thing that I observed, and I've even observed in myself. Why does this happen? Because they're trying to suppress the pain that they feel as a baseline of reality. Now, this is coming up time and again for me with clients right now, is that people are just in pain and they don't know why. People can't get on with their lives and they don't know why. Even one client was telling me, I couldn't clean the bathroom, I couldn't face cleaning the bathroom, and then I did a process with her. I gave her like a guided meditation to listen to. It was 10 minutes long. Really, really quick, but we changed their thoughts, changed their feelings, and then straight away she's like, hey, I managed to clean the bathroom, and I did it with no problems whatsoever. I was in a really good mood, and then for the rest of the day I was chatting with my family and everything was great. If you feel so much, if you can imagine, or you might have experienced it, being in so much pain as just a general of life that you can't handle your bank account, you can't tidy your house, you can't get the car fixed when it breaks down, you can't pay your rent on time. All of these kinds of things, they reflect something that is called weak object constancy or objective constancy. Objective constancy basically means our objective understanding that there is a constant in the objective world, that it's not all just subjective and me and mine and what's going on in this sphere, that there is a world out there, that there is a landlord who needs to be paid, that there is a car that needs to be fixed, that there is a bathroom that needs cleaning, or whatever it is. Now, here we go. Borderline personality disorder is recognized. It's right there in the DSM, the World Health Organization recognize it, it's out there. But the cause of it that I will now claim is complex PTSD rooted in childhood trauma. And when I'm talking to my clients, 95% of my clients suffer from complex PTSD rooted in childhood trauma. Complex PTSD is not recognized by the DSM. All complex PTSD means is if you say, okay, normal PTSD is what? A guy is a vet from a war and he gets shot through the shoulder, or like my grandfather, he was in a slip trench and he got hit by a mortar and it didn't go off, but it took his arm off. So that he would have PTSD. And you say, why have you got PTSD? And he said, well, I got this injury. You go, what injury? Well, I've got a fucking arm. Who did that to you? Well, some German dude did it to me because he's a soldier and we were enemies and we were at war. It's horrendous. Got no arm. It was hugely painful, hugely traumatic. I mean, the very experience of war, all that noise, the constant threat, all that, just living for weeks and months at end in a huge state of adrenalized stress, very bad for you. But you can say at this part of my life, I was in a war and a guy who was trying to kill me tried to kill me and failed. You can say what it is. So it's not complex, but it's very deep PTSD. Complex PTSD as a result of adverse childhood experiences and being raised in an abusive childhood environment has multiple levels, multiple layers, sometimes no visible scars whatsoever, comes from multiple sources, and it's more like I can't remember the name of the researcher who made this point, but I'll find it and I'll talk about it here. She said it's more like the guy or the woman who's the soldier who gets captured and is taken prisoner and is then tortured for a few years. They're in a controlled environment that they can't escape, and they're experiencing different conflicting injunctions to behave and to do things, like I was talking about Gregory Bateson's double-bind theory of schizophrenia, the torture of political prisoners and the breaking down of their sense of self, that causes complex PTSD. And it actually can be harder to weed out because it's deeper, it's multi-layered, it's come from different layers of life. You've got a certain type of trauma at age 1, and then a totally different type of trauma from a different source at age 4, and then a brand new trauma from a different source at age 8, and all of these things the therapist and the client has to go into and try and work out. What's the end result? You're walking around feeling stressed out and uncomfortable and not happy. I'm just not happy, I'm just miserable, I just feel sad. And then common things that I hear from clients at the moment, I had to go and look and re-look this up because I'd hear it all the time. Catastrophic thinking. I see my clients just imagining horrible, paranoid, dreadful things working out, and everything ends in a catastrophe. It's very, very common. This is a result of complex PTSD, but complex PTSD isn't recognized, which is a damn shame because some people would claim, and I would back them, that all of your personality disorders out there, whether it's narcissism, borderline, avoidant, dissociative, negativistic, what it is, it's all rooted in complex PTSD from childhood trauma. Why do they not want to look at that? Well, you can't medicate that, so there's no money in it, and it's pretty hard to treat. You know, we've really got to walk hand in hand through the foothills of hell and just, you know, it's like pick up the pieces one phase at a time. It's very, very difficult to treat. These are my notes. I wrote them on my phone. So coming back to borderline personality disorder, not the cause of it, but the other ways in which it manifests, so that you can recognise this either in yourself or in others. I've got 3 clients at the moment who are borderline, high functioning, openly like, yes, read the symptoms, that's me. Now, if you get to that point where they're saying, yeah, I've read the symptoms, this is me, I don't want this to happen anymore, you can start to move forward. I genuinely believe that there's hope there. There's different forms of therapy that have worked. One of them is called schema therapy, another one is called dialectical therapy, which is a mix of Buddhism with cognitive behavioural therapy that focuses a lot on mindfulness. And I'm going to talk more about that on this channel because it's a very cool therapeutic method. But basically, if you're raising awareness, raising mindfulness, treating yourself with compassion, realizing that these behaviors aren't, they're bad behaviors. Like if your boyfriend doesn't do the dishes and you go crazy and try and choke him, and you want to smash him in the face, you would think, well, that means I must be a bad person, and then we start moralizing. And as I said to you in the beginning of this project, don't moralize. It's pointless. You're running a strategy, you're running a program. I'm not a subscriber to moral relativism at all, but in terms of you getting better, it's not going to help you at all to go, well, I did that and that was awful. I was a cocaine addict, so I must have been of weak character, or, you know, genetically I had some bullshit narrative creeps in. We don't do that. It happened. Now, what's the reason? Where's the root? Where's this stuff coming from? We can do that without moralizing, and we should really try to, because the rest of the world is going to try and push us back into moralizing and judging and, you know, making us re-victimizing you into feeling bad again for what you've already experienced. So there's also, apart from the impulsivity, there is huge amounts of chaos in the interpersonal relationships, massive self-image issues, either body dysmorphia, you know, which will then manifest as anorexia, bulimia, or bigorexia, the abuse of steroids and that kind of thing. Massive self-image issues in the sense of, I just don't know who I am. Some people, I talk to them and I'm like, well, let's get back to you. Let's get back to what you want, who you are, what you're about. And they're like, I don't know. I really don't know. And I'm like, well, instead of being scared, let's get curious, let's get excited. Wow, we get to start you from scratch. Let's talk about the type of music you're into. And it's almost like the sense of self has been worn down so badly through abuse that there's hardly any sense of self there. So whatever passion they do feel, whatever interest they do feel in any area of life, as the therapist or as the coach, you've got to go in and pull that out and go, okay, let's talk about that. Why are you passionate about that? Tell me more about it, and really rev the engine of that passion so that the sense of self can start to re-establish in a healthy way. Obviously, if that sense of self is coming from, oh, I really like heroin much more than cocaine, I do enjoy sticking it in between my toes, that's not so good, we're not going to do that. You know, in healthy ways, we want to encourage that sense of self to come back. Apart from the chaos in interpersonal relationships, you ever noticed how some people just fall out with everybody all the time? That can be narcissistic personality disorder, because the people they're falling out with won't submit to them. But I would suggest, I'm leaning more towards thinking, if you get a character, either a potential boyfriend or girlfriend, or if you're a therapist and you're doing coaching work with people and they're falling out with everybody, I would lean more towards looking at borderline personality disorder, because chaos and interpersonal relationships is more commonly found with them, and they go through this process that is called idealization and devaluation. That's a cycle that borderline personality types go through. So they meet somebody and this person is the coolest person in the world, they absolutely love them, and a month later they're a piece of shit and they hate them. And it can be as rapid as that. And the moment at which that person falls off that pedestal and just drops down into the latrine can be, you know, it can be overnight. I witnessed this recently with somebody, and there was a friend of mine, and we both got devalued on the same day, at the same time, and in the same way. And it was a remarkable thing to watch. But yeah, this process of idealization and devaluation is part of borderline, and that's why they have such chaotic and unstable interpersonal relationships. Then there's self-image issues. Here's a huge one. Oh my goodness, I wish I'd known this 4 years ago. Fear of abandonment. Now, this is the thing. The borderline personality type fears abandonment with such intensity that they will create the circumstances of abandonment and abandon you first. So some people fear things so much, they spend so much time fixating and emoting and just putting energy into the idea of something happening that they make it happen. You could say that's a bit woo-woo, and I would say, yeah, maybe it is. Maybe it is on the edges of woo. Maybe we've just drifted across the border and from rational Western scientific thought into the very foothills of woo. Well, we've gone there, let's come back again. It's the same principle though, isn't it, as people who are talking about manifestation, visualization, certain elements of like white magic, for example. You put emotion and you put thought into a thing occurring and it makes it happen. From the model that I prefer to come from, which is using the unconscious, using hypnosis. If we train the unconscious to focus on something, we hypnotize ourselves to focus on something, we're more likely to manifest it. Maybe it's both, maybe it's neither, I don't know. The map is not the territory. But what happens is they can start to create circumstances of you abandoning them. Say if you're in a relationship with somebody who's got borderline, they will behave like such a dick that eventually they force you to throw them out. They force you to abandon them. That's one thing they do. Or the other thing that they do, which is apparently very, very common, is they will abandon you first. They're so scared that you're going to abandon them that they'll create the circumstances whereby they can idealize, devalue, and abandon you first. And then they kind of win. They'll still feel sad. They'll feel awful afterwards, and they'll be full of regret and like bewilderment, and they still won't make them feel good, but they'll do it. Okay, so fear of abandonment is huge, and fear of rejection is huge. Being strangely angry over nothing, and confusing the shit out of everybody around them. You know, sudden intense bursts of violent emotion, being really, really angry, and then, but in a way that is hard to track, that's not logical, that doesn't seem to follow a pattern. That's borderline personality disorder. They're incredibly insensitive. They are incredibly sensitive, paranoid. Their sense of self is weak. Their cognition ain't great. Sometimes I'm talking to people and they complain to me, oh, I've got ADHD. Oh, I don't concentrate very well. And I'm like looking at them and going, I think you have complex PTSD. I think you're stressed out. I think you just live in a state of trauma, post-traumatic stress. Post-traumatic. You had the trauma, then after the trauma, there's just stress. Why? Because there is. Because the flight has been switched on. So you spend the rest of your life just being like really twitchy, going, where are the demons? They must be coming. Something must be about to eat me any time. And so you're constantly living in that mode. So their cognition becomes weak. Well, probably because one thing is they're knackered, and another thing is they don't like, you know, I spoke about this elsewhere as well, the Zen tradition, the Eckhart Tolle way of doing things was being in the moment, being in the now. And I always used to say, but for those of us who have psychological problems, we don't want to be in the now. We don't want to be in the moment because it fucking hurts. It sucks to be in the now. And that leads to another element of borderline, which is another clear indicator is dissociation. So if a person wants to be out of their body, they want to go and have a lot of sex, drink, take drugs because they need to be experiencing pleasure, so they're not in here, they're out there, outside of themselves. That's called dissociation or detachment. Some people, when they're being attacked, sexually assaulted, raped, whatever, and they can't escape, they start to hide within. They can't physically run, so they run psychologically, and they will imagine that what is happening is not happening to them, it's happening to somebody else. And then dissociation kicks in, and then that person learns to not feel who they are as themselves, and it becomes very, very hard for them to respond, talk, feel, move as an integrated unit, as a normal human being. Hard, but not impossible. I think if somebody wants to be cured of something, then I choose to believe that they will be in time. And when I'm dealing with people, that's what I convey to them. I say, if this is what you want, then this is what we'll do, and you will get better. You will, or we'll die trying. We'll be age 70, still talking on Skype, going, are you feeling any better yet? And they'll be going, no, it didn't work. 70 years have gone by. You said you could fix me. Where am I going with this? I have no idea. But like, there needs to be a will to change. This is one of the things that I'll talk about in another video. But if that person, a lot of the people I'm talking to, they're really seriously they're carrying a lot of pain, a lot of trauma, a lot of wounds, and there's a deep, heavy, there's a lot of stuff going on there that's not so good. But what gives me hope is their determination to get better, in their sense. They have this attitude of whatever it takes, I'll do it, and I will get myself better. And under those circumstances, I'm 100% optimistic that they will. Don't know exactly how, but you know, if you've got a strong enough, what's the expression? If you have a strong enough why, you can always find the how. Another way of saying it is people will do anything if they have a good enough reason. Thank you very much for your time and for your attention, and I'll speak to you again soon.